Hi there, my name is Hannah Brandel, and I currently teach English 1 honors using mostly a blended learning model. I began transforming my teaching after I experienced a large amount of frustration with traditional teaching. I would spend most of my time in front of my class, lecturing to the entire class of students, and I was truly unaware of who actually understood the concepts that I was teaching until I gave an assessment. So I decided that I needed to transform my teaching in a way to better meet the needs of each of my individual students and to kind of meet them where they were at as a learner. So I did transform my class this year. I would identify it as self-paced but with due dates because I feel that this allows for flexibility and choice as to what the students are working on a daily basis within my classroom, but it also forces them to stay on top of their work in order to accomplish everything that we need to get through within an honors level course. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through what a typical day looks like within my classroom to hopefully give you a better idea of how this is accomplished. So I have several class roles within my classroom, one of which being the Energizer Engineer. So I have 2 students for each of my class periods that are in charge of leading a quick little Energizer at the beginning of the class period. This is just a quick little 3 to 5 minute exercise. It gets them out of their seats, it gets them to clear their minds before they begin diving into work within my classroom. So this is anything from Good Things or Four Corners or Simon Says. They've been really creative with the different types of activities that they lead within my class. After that, I spend a couple of minutes just going through reminders. This might be about assignments that are coming up that I want them to prioritize if they haven't accomplished already. And then I also just give a quick overview of the direct instruction for the day because my direct instruction does vary. Sometimes I have mini lessons that I teach to the entire class. Sometimes I am working with a small group of students that I've kind of targeted because I see that they're struggling within a certain content matter. Sometimes it's voluntary. So sometimes I say, okay, I'm going to lead a session on this topic. If you feel that you could benefit from more direct instruction from this topic, come on over and join me. Sometimes I'm meeting one-on-one with students for essay conferencing, or sometimes, like I said, it's on a voluntary basis that a student approaches me and just says that they need extra help on something, and so I'm meeting one-on-one with that student. So during those couple minutes, I'll just let them know of what that direct instruction is for the day so that they can kind of plan accordingly as to what they should be doing during that work day. On Mondays, we do go through the weekly checklist, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. Then, during work time, this is either independent, so they would be working through something on the weekly checklist. Sometimes it's collaborative because I do like to get my students to communicate with one another, so a lot of my assignments are done on a partner basis or in small groups. And then, like I said, obviously direct instruction is part of work time as well. So then that leads us to the very end of the class period, which is just the last few minutes. My students complete a daily log reflection every day, which I'm also going to show you. And then we wrap up class. Sometimes I give them an exit ticket. Sometimes I kind of take a poll on how things are going. And then I'm also obviously reminding them of what's to come later in the week. So the weekly checklist is something that I post every week on Sunday afternoons. And this is basically my students' roadmap for the week to be able to figure out what they should be spending their time doing. Sometimes from week to week things overlap, so you might see one assignment on a weekly checklist for 4 weeks, or for instance I have a project that goes the entire quarter, so it's going to be on the checklist from week to week every single week. But then sometimes there's going to be new assignments that are posted on the weekly checklist, and that's why on Mondays, during that first few minutes before we get into work time, I always introduce the weekly checklist. So I'm able to explain to them what they should be working on and when things are going to be due, because like I said, even though there is some flexibility with what students are working on a daily basis, they do still have very strict deadlines that they have to meet in order to get full credit. So on this weekly checklist, I'm going to just kind of walk you through some examples of what types of assignments that they would see on this. So for instance, I only do my lectures now via recordings. So rather than giving a lecture to the entire class, I actually record them so that my students can listen to them at their own pace. They can listen to them more than once. They don't have to listen to the whole thing all at once. They can listen to it in smaller chunks. So I wanted to kind of just show you what that looks like. So I'll go ahead and click on Act 4. This is for Romeo and Juliet, so I'm going to go ahead and play that for you, just so you can get an idea.
Welcome to the Act 4 recording of Romeo and Juliet. So if you remember at the very end of Act 3, Romeo had just been sent over to Mantua because he was exiled from Verona, and Juliet had just found out the very, very tragic news.
So that just gives you a condensed version of what those recordings look like. Overall, my students have really appreciated them and have kind of saw the benefit of having those at their leisure and to be able to go back to when they're preparing for quizzes and tests and things like that. You'll notice, though, that on this checklist with each of these assignments, I do have the due dates listed so that the students are really aware of when they need to accomplish each of these assignments. But then each of these links are obviously bringing them to the actual assignment, and then all of their assignments for my class are submitted via Google Classroom. So what I do is when I put an assignment on the checklist, I go ahead and create a folder on Google Classroom so that when a student completes an assignment, they can go ahead and submit it and they don't have to worry about it. But then obviously I'm continuously reminding them up until the due date that they need to get that submitted. The legacy project is what I was originally referring to as my project that goes on for the entire school year. So I think one of the top questions that I receive from other teachers kind of interested in what I'm doing is, what happens when a student just finishes everything that they need? And that really hasn't been an issue for me because, as you can see, they're quite busy according to this checklist. But I think the top tip that I could provide you is just always make sure that they have something that they can kind of fall back on. And for me, that's the legacy project because I give them the entire quarter to work on it. It's something that's kind of always with them. And so even if they finish kind of like their weekly work, like the unit that we're on, they know that they can always continue to work on that legacy project. So that's been really, really helpful for me. And then something that also kind of rolls over from week to week and the due dates aren't as strict are my two programs that I use, Achieve 3000 and No Red Ink. So as you can see, I always list previous articles and past lessons so that they know what we've done in past weeks, but then I add a new one each week or every other week, and then I only grade those a couple times throughout the quarter. So that allows them kind of that flexibility to be able to do it at their own pace, that if they want to spend an entire week working through these programs, they can, or they can kind of just do a little bit at a time before that overall due date. So something that I also wanted to show you was just the course calendar. So this looks a lot different than probably a typical course calendar because of this kind of mode of teaching. So the only thing that I really ever put on the course calendar is going to be the due dates. So I have those always very highlighted, so that's really easy to see when things are going to be due. I always list the direct instruction for the week so that they're able to kind of plan out how much time that they're going to have during work time. So things like Intro to Poetry Out Loud, that's going to be the entire class. So I'm just going to quick do a little introduction into that unit. Legacy Project Intro, obviously that's going to be the entire class. But then something like an optional grammar session is only going to be for those students who actually need that assistance with that particular grammar lesson. This was in our Poetry Out Loud unit when I was doing some mini lessons on presentations of their poems. And then something obviously like essay conferencing is just going to be with particular students. So this is just kind of giving them a brief overview of what to expect for that particular week. In addition, it also tells the students that on the days that I don't have direct instruction planned, that I'll be available for them for whatever needs that they might have. So then they can kind of plan accordingly. Okay, if I know Ms. Brandel is available on Tuesday, I can go to her with the questions that I have, and I can work with her on a one-on-one basis so that they're able to understand the topic better. The last thing that I wanted to show you is the daily log, and so this is what we spend the last few minutes going through and having them complete before they head out for the day. And so I can't take credit for this, Mr. Persini created this, but what they do is they write down what they've worked on for the day, just to kind of reflect upon what they've accomplished. They rate themselves on their work ethic as well as the growth, and it's actually pretty cool to see how honest a lot of them are. So if they've had maybe a day that they weren't necessarily as motivated or productive as what they had hoped, they do kind of tend to rate themselves a little bit lower, which is cool to see that. And then tomorrow this is just really nice, and this is what the students talk about the most, is the fact that they like that they get to kind of set a small goal for tomorrow. It also allows them the next day to be able to come in and say, okay, I know this is what I need to get done, and they don't have to sit there and try to think about what they should be working on. So it's been really beneficial, and I like the way that it kind of wraps up the class for the day. And I do check on these periodically throughout the quarter. It's also really good for when parents contact me and say, what is my student doing in class, or what is my child doing in class? Why are they not accomplishing their work? I'm able to pull this up and kind of show them what might be the problem and what we can kind of do to make sure that they get back on track. So that is all I have for you. Please reach out if you have any questions or if I can assist you in any way. And I hope that this has maybe given you some inspiration or something that you can kind of take and apply to your own class. So thank you.